We want to do the podcast. We want to write the book. We want to launch the course. We want to do all these things. And it can be so overwhelming. And what I always say is one baby a year, right? Like literally each arm of your business is like a newborn baby, and nobody wants to have triplets, right? Welcome to the High Vibe Life podcast, where we are obsessed with all things manifestation, neuroscience, personal growth, and quite simply, living a life beyond our wildest dreams. I'm Moira Casava, author, speaker, podcaster, manifestation, and mindset master. Since getting sober 25 years ago, I've helped tens of thousands of women break through and achieve massive levels of wealth, joy, and freedom. Now it's your turn. Let's dig in. Well, welcome back to the show, you guys. I am fresh off of one of the most magical trips of my life to Napa, California. I kept joking the entire time. Who knew that a recovering alcoholic would love Napa so much? Everyone kept laughing. They're like, "You've never been to Napa?" I'm like, well, why would I have come to Napa? And now I get it, because it is one of just the most beautiful places I've ever been. I mean, the morning we were leaving, there's like hot air balloons going up at 7 a.m. over the hills and the mountains. I'm like, this place is magic. Now, you guys know, if you followed me for a long time, that California is like my heart, right? I'm a Cali girl at heart. Every single time I go there, I always say there's magic in the air. Like there's literally palpable magic in the air out in California for me. And doesn't matter if I'm in Southern California, Northern California, Carmel by the Sea is like my favorite place on planet Earth. I was in San Diego, La Jolla for a long time, and I felt the exact same in Napa. It was breathtaking. And I was there actually for a small intimate mastermind weekend with the one and only Brendon Burchard. So I'm going to give you guys today, and I've got my growth day journal right here. I'm going to give you my top 3 takeaways from the weekend. It was next level, awesome. I mean, the opportunity, and I'll give you a little background of, the opportunity to work with Brendon. I've known Brendon for, goodness, at least a decade. He used to have an event called, I want to say it was called High Performance Academy that I attended many years ago. I saw him keynote speak for my company probably about 9 years ago. And he is, I said that first day I saw him, I was like, no exaggeration, he was the best keynote speaker I have ever seen in my entire life. And I stand by that today, almost 10 years later. So I did a deep dive years ago on his work, his high performance habits book, Millionaire Messenger. Like, he has so many books, you guys. They're all incredible and truly are a huge part of my journey in life and success, and why I've been able to accomplish what I've been able to accomplish. So the work that I've done with Brendon has been very deep, and it goes back many years. This isn't somebody that I listened to a podcast or I heard him speak on stage one time. I think one of the most important things that I actually teach people that I mentor is that we don't want to just hop from, person to person and book to book and podcast to podcast. And while that's great to absorb on a very, really surface level, I always suggest taking a thought leader and going as deep and as far as you can into their work for at least a quarter, but maybe it's 6 months or a year. And that's what I've done in the past with Brendon's work. It's not been a surface dive. It's been a very deep dive. And I just adore him. He is one of a kind. And I will say that I have had the incredible opportunity to meet so many famous people in my life, and so many of them are absolutely amazing and authentic and just like you would imagine in, the best of ways. But Brendon is next level. The first time that I really worked with him in depth over a couple days, we were working on a project where it was very stressful. It was a really tough energy and tough project that we were working on. And I never saw his energy falter. I've never seen someone have more presence and attention than he does hours and hours and hours and days and days and days on end. Like he doesn't walk off the stage or walk out of the group and like take a deep breath because he's exhausted. Like it's just, he is literally a product of his teachings, and it's stunning to watch. So I want to share with you my 3 takeaways just from this past weekend. So number 1, are you ready for this? Because it's so good. All stress is correlated to time. Number 1, all stress is correlated to time. Now, this is a concept that I teach a lot in my mentorship when it comes to the business side of things. I always say, we want to do the podcast, we want to write the book, we want to launch the course, we want to do all these things. And it can be so overwhelming. And what I always say is 1 baby a year, right? Like literally each arm of your business is like a newborn baby, and nobody wants to have triplets, right? We want to birth that one business idea and nurture it and just literally spend every single waking moment with it until that baby is like turning into a toddler and has legs under it and is kind of operating a little bit more on its own. And so it's that same concept, right? He said it feels like a crisis when you don't give yourself enough time. If you give yourself enough time, it just becomes a plan, right? And I can say this for my own business. When I look on the whiteboard that I have at home, it'll say 2024, this is the focus. 2025, you're going to write the book. 2026, you'll do the TED Talk. 2027, you'll launch the school. 2028, that's how far out, right, we're going with like big project ideas. Otherwise, we just get completely stressed and overwhelmed. So all stress is correlated to time. Think about it even when you're traveling. If you're stressed and you're rushing, it's a time thing, right? If you are like me trying to get projects done this week that I have deadlines for, the only stress I'm feeling this week is because those projects have a deadline and there's time, right? So all stress is correlated to time. So really what we're asking you to do and what he's suggesting is just what I said. Elongate the time, right? Elongate the time so that you give yourself enough time to plan. So think about just elongating time on the horizon. And this was so powerful. I needed to hear this next piece of this. And really, I just needed permission. So he said, allow a down year sometimes to build a new world, to build a new life. So for instance, for me, I have lots of revenue streams, and I'm actually made the decision this year because intuitively, I always follow my intuition. I was like, it doesn't feel like this is the year to launch really my mastermind again, which is crazy to say because I've launched my mastermind for the last 2 years. It's been wildly successful. It is a huge income stream for me. So why in the world would I not launch my mastermind? Well, because I have so many transitions going on in my business and so many shifts and changes and things that need my attention right now. And so going into this weekend, there was such a huge part of me that was like, this is insane. Like, I need the income because of the shifts and changes. But at the same time, like, I just know that I need to take a breath and focus on these other things, and then I'll bring the mastermind back in. And it might be 6 months later, right? But I'm thinking it might be 12 months later. And I just kept thinking, like, this is not making sense in my head. This is always what I teach you about intuition and the whisper, right? But I was like, this is not making sense in my head. I just, one of my biggest income streams went away when the body changes happened, meaning Beachbody. And at the same time, I'm going to take away another income stream. Like, what? But I knew in my heart that I was like, because I'm setting up a new world, a new life, right? I'm doing something temporarily this year to make sure things are flowing right in the following years. So give yourself permission to allow a down year, right? With the intention that the next several years will be even bigger. But without that down year, you're not going to get to that scale in your businesses. So that was amazing. All right, we're going to kind of whiz through these next two a little bit quicker. the number two takeaway, and this was just one little sentence: the quicker the rise, the longer the decompression. And for me, that totally correlated to the fact that when I became top coach in 2020 in a $1 billion company, I really went through I would love to call it just a decompression for maybe a year or two, right? This phase where there were moments where I was like, am I depressed? And it didn't necessarily, there were moments where it did feel like depression, but not days and weeks on end. It was just kind of this funk, this transition, this weird time where I was like, I don't know what's next. I don't know what God wants for me. Where am I going with my life? What's my purpose? Finding those goals again and finding that mission again. And as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, the quicker the rise. And I built that, multi-million-dollar business really fast, in a few years, which is ridiculously fast, And so it was like, oh, so that's actually expected and normal, not, oh, and then I couldn't figure out my stuff. And then I got stuck in this funk. And then we almost treat that decompression time as we put a negative bent on it, right? We call it oh, I was lost. Well, maybe you were just decompressing. And he correlated it to this, you guys, and I love this. So I've been a scuba diver in my life, and I'm sure some of you guys have too. Or you understand the concept at least. The quicker you go down, the further you go down, the slower you have to come up, right? You actually have to stop when you're coming up from scuba diving. You have to literally stop and recalibrate. I'm losing all my lingo for, what we do when we scuba dive. I can't think of any of it right now. But you have to recalibrate, right? And go through this process before you come all the way up to the surface, or your brain will explode. And when he was telling me this, I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And so we have to give ourselves permission and expectancy to decompress, right? If we've got this giant thing that happens in our life, or this giant success or rise or experience, the decompression will be longer the bigger the event, the quicker the rise, right? So expect it and embrace it versus pushing it away or feeling like there's something wrong with you. Oh, I needed that permission. Okay, last but certainly not least, there's lots of threads to this. So there's not one little quote, but he was talking about really just being able to operate in the world and not get frustrated and not get irritated. And almost all of our frustration and our pain comes, well, first of all, it comes from time, right? The stress comes from time. But this kind of frustration is all about expectations. It is all about expectations. And it's usually expectations of other people. So he said this: have expectations and standards of yourself. Are you ready for this? And the people that you pay, right? I have to have expectations and standards that people I employ have to meet, but I do not get, well, not that I don't get, but I shouldn't have expectations and standards of anyone else, And it's when we let that expectation go of others that we're not bothered by it, right? And he referenced Mel Robbins' new book, which I haven't read yet, but I cannot wait to read because I've heard her talk about the concept over and over. It's called the let them theory. Let them, right? Somebody's saying crappy things about you on social media. Let them. Your mother, I'll use my mother, not my mother-in-law. Your mother is commenting on things about how you're raising your children. You know what? Let her. Just this whole philosophy of just let them. Let them do their thing and don't let it be tied to what you think they have to do, right? We talk about this a lot in recovery, how we joke about this all the time. It's gosh, I would be perfectly happy and content if everyone would do exactly what I need them to do. and act accordingly to, my plans and my timeline and what I think everybody should be doing. Like, how ridiculous is that we actually expect that? And then he backed it up with this, though. And I thought this was actually more extreme. He said only 8% of the world are actually high performers, right? So Brendon is a high performance coach. I'm a high performance coach. But we have to remind ourselves that we're interacting with the world, like dozens of people a day, hundreds of people a day, thousands if you're interacting with social media. Only 8% of the world are high performers. The other 92%, we really can't have that same expectation for if we're a high performer, right? And so I was thinking about this. I was like, oh my gosh, my mom has always talked to me about like the hula hoop. She's like, if it's not in your hula hoop, like if they're outside your hula hoop, like the random person on social media, they're not in my hula hoop. My hula hoop is me and my team and my family and things like that. And so my mom's always talked about that. I love that reference. I talk about it in recovery. We always say my side of the street. Like, that's not my side of the street. Like, your response to that thing, it's not my side of the street. That's your side of the street. Like, I'm completely detached from that. So I, for the last 25 years, have really had the amazing experience of like living into this philosophy. One of my best friends, Brantley, has this amazing analogy or reference that she talks about her picnic blanket. She's like, this is my picnic blanket. And, I will be kind and nice to all the hundreds and thousands of people walking by in the park by my picnic blanket. I'll even offer them food, but you're not on my picnic blanket. Very few people actually get on my picnic blanket, right? The people on your picnic blanket are the ones, including yourself, that you can have standards and expectations for. But the rest of them, let them, right? Let it go. Let it go. If you ask yourself today, if any negative emotion comes up today, whether a stress, anxiety, frustration, irritation, think about it today. Is it because of your expectations of other people? Or going back to the first takeaway, is it your expectancy that you're on a timetable, right? You're trying to rush something that maybe needs to be elongated. So those are your takeaways, guys. Number one, stretch the time out. Give yourself time. And when you give yourself time, you allow yourself to strategize and to plan things out and execute so much better, right? Number two, remember that the decompression after a big event or a big success is not only expected, it's normal. It's something to be leaned into versus pushed away. And then number three, let them. Just let them. Let go of other people's expectations and other people's, standards that you have for them, but have those standards for yourself. All right, you guys. So that's it for today. I hope that those takeaways resonate with you. I would love to hear from you about how they do and personal experiences that you've had with those three. And we will see you next week.